Lesson 10, summarizing bivariate categorical data with relative frequencies. In this lesson, we'll distinguish between categorical data and numerical data, and we'll create two-way frequency tables from given data. Open your book to page 13. Exploratory Challenge 1, extending the frequency table to a relative frequency table. Determining the number of students in each cell presents the first step in organizing bivariate categorical data. Another way of analyzing the data in a table is to calculate the relative frequencies for each cell. Relative frequencies relate each frequency count to the total number of observations. For each cell in this table, the relative frequencies of a cell is found by dividing the frequency in the cell by the total number of responses. Sorry, I have some typos in here. Okay, so for each cell in the table, the relative frequency of the cell is found by dividing the frequency of the cell by the total number of responses. Consider the two-way frequency table from the previous lesson. So those were all the answers that we got at the end of the lesson, lesson 9. The relative frequency table would be found by dividing, oh my gosh, this can't. By dividing each of the above cells by 450. For example, the relative frequency for the females selecting to fly is 49 divided by, and that should be 450, and I can't change that one. Or approximately 0.109 to the nearest thousand. A few of the other relative frequencies to the nearest thousand are shown in the frequency table below. Okay, so you keep taking each frequency and dividing it by the total, 450, and that gives you what we call the relative frequency. Okay, so exercise number 1 says calculate the remaining relative frequencies in the table below. Write the value in the table as a decimal rounded to the nearest thousand or as a percent. We're going to write them as decimals. Probably the easiest to look back at your completed table that you made yesterday on page 14, I think it was. Let's see, no, that was the page 8. Oh, sorry, it's right here on the previous page. This one is 49 divided by 450. And then we've got 60, 48, 1, and 70. All divided by 450. And the females added up was 228. Rounding it, that goes up to 0.507. Let's see the male numbers. This one was 51. $51, $71, $27, $25, and $48. $71, $27, $25, $48. Male total was 222. We're going to divide all these by 40 or 450 also. And now my totals. Of course, 450. And of course, 450. based on the previous work with frequency tables, which cells in the table would represent joint relative frequencies? Well, the joint frequencies were in the middle of the table, so now the joint relative frequencies would be in the inside of the table. The non-shaded cells. Now, don't always expect them to be not shaded, but in this case, they're non-shaded cells. So up here, these would be joint relative frequencies. Which cells in the table would represent the marginal relative frequencies? And that would be the ones around the outside of the table. In this case, they're shaded. Don't always expect them to be shaded. Okay, so these are marginal relative frequencies. And over here also. What is the joint relative frequency for females who selected invisibility as their favorite superpower? So females who selected invisibility is 0.106. Which they mentioned percentage earlier. To figure out the percentage, you either multiply it by 100 or just move the decimal place over 2 places. So in this case, that would be 10.6%. Think about when we talked about probability earlier this year. Okay, what is the marginal relative frequency for freeze time? And interpret the meaning of this value. So marginal relative frequency for freeze time. Well, here's freeze time. So coming down to the bottom for the relative, that would be 0.291.
Staff and students, please pardon the interruption. Please know that homecoming ticket sales were originally designed to end today. However, we are going to extend our ticket sales till Monday. Monday will be the last day for homecoming tickets, homecoming ticket sales, any guest contracts, any student contracts, any of that will all be finished Monday. So Monday is the last day. We will end after sea lunch on Monday. So if there's anyone who's like, oh, I didn't have this or I didn't have that, make sure you take care of your stuff. Last day is Monday. Thanks.
Okay, so interpreting the meaning of that, what that means is that 29% of the males and females selected freeze time as their favorite superpower. You do not interpret, you do not get full credit. So make sure you're doing what the entire question tells you to do. Okay, what is the difference between a joint relative frequency, or what is the difference between the joint relative frequency for males and females who selected flying as their favorite superpower? Okay, difference means subtract, so you want to look up what the joint relative frequency is for males, and then also what it is for females, and then find the difference between them for flying. Oh my goodness.
I'm sorry for the second interruption. Teachers, any students who were not able to purchase a guest contract ticket because of technical difficulties at lunch today, please send them down to the window next to the office. Thank you.
Okay, so it's 0.113 for males, and I think it was 0.109 for females. Yep, this is for the males, and this is for the females for flying, and then we're going to subtract the two of those. Should always show your work so that I can see where you go wrong. And we're going to subtract those two, so that's going to come out to 0.004. Number 7, is there a noticeable difference between the genders and their favorite superpowers? So do we see a big difference between males and females? Or where do you see the biggest difference between the males and the females? It's like invisibility. Yeah, there's a big difference between a lot of them. Like, to fly is only about a 1% difference. Freeze time is a 2% difference. Invisibility, now we're talking from 10% to 1%. So that's a big difference. Or, excuse me, that would be 6%. 10% to 6%. That's a 4% difference. Here we're talking less than 1% to 5%. And then this is also a 5% difference, 15% and 10%. So it's looking like super strength and telepathy have the biggest difference. So is there a noticeable difference between the genders and their favorite superpowers? And I would say yes. And I'm going to add on to that, especially with, it was super strength and telepathy. Okay, exploratory challenge number 2, interpreting the data. Interest in superheroes continues at Rufus King High School. The students who analyzed the data in the previous lesson decided to create a comic strip for the school website that involves a superhero. They thought the summaries developed from the data would be helpful in designing the comic strip. Only one power will be given to the superhero. A debate arose as to what the power for the school's superhero would possess. Students used the two-way frequency table and the relative frequency table to continue their discussion. Take another look at those tables. Scott initially indicated that the character created should have super strength as the special power. This suggestion was not well received by the students planning this project. In particular, Jill argued, well, if you want to ignore more than half of the readers, then I suggest telepathy is a better power for the character. She said if you don't want to ignore them. Exercises 8 through 10. Scott acknowledged that super strength was probably not the best choice based on the data. The data indicated that freeze time is the most popular power for a superhero, continued Scott. Jill, however, still did not agree with Scott that this was a good choice. She argued that telepathy was a better choice. How does the data support Scott's claim? Why do you think he selected freeze time as a special power for the comic strip? So let's look at freeze time. So for freeze time, the first thing I noticed is that 60 of the females and 71 of the males, so he might have selected it because more males liked it. But even more than that, if you look at those numbers, 60 and 71, those numbers are higher overall than most of the other powers. Now, Jill's saying telepathy, and she's seen 70 females, but it's only 48 males. And I think that's why Scott doesn't like that answer. The other thing that I see about freeze time is that freeze time has 13% females and 15% males, and now those two percentages are a lot closer than telepathy, which Jill wanted at 15% and 10%, which is a 5% difference. Okay, so going back to the actual question, it says, how does the data support Scott's claim? Why do you think he selected freeze time? So my first answer is the number of males and females looks like it's the majority, or it looks like there's more people who chose freeze time compared to the other powers. And then the other thing is that the percentages were closer together. The percents of males and females were close together. Those are the two reasons I think the data supports Scott's claim. Okay, how does the data support Jill's claim? Why do you think she selected telepathy? Okay, again, there was a high number of females that selected telepathy. So I'm just going to say the reason why she selected it is she saw there's a large number who selected telepathy. However, when you look at the breakdown, the reason why she chose it is because more of those people are females. She probably chose this one over, what was the one he chose? Freeze time, because there were more females. think she's siding with the females. Of the two special powers, freeze time and telepathy, select one and justify why you think it's the better. So you can go ahead and you can pick yours. Do you think that the freeze time is better or the telepathy is better? Pick yours and justify it. I know what my answer would be, but I want you to choose your answer. And when you support it, you're supposed to use data to support your answer. Okay, and that's the end of this lesson.